Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday Show. It's Wednesday. We've got an absolutely very, very powerful show coming up for you today. Sometimes it's more light-hearted, sometimes very serious subject. Today we're on the serious side of things. We're going to meet an incredible woman. She's in my top 10 list of most amazing women I've ever met in my lifetime list. And we're going to be talking to her very soon, and some extra special guests as well. So introducing, we're going to be talking to Emma Jane Taylor. And now she has recently got married, so we're using her maiden name here, which I think is the name she still puts all her stuff out into the world under. And if I'm wrong, I could easily change it. But she's dedicated to having difficult conversations, spending a lot of her time, as you can see, going across the bottom of the screen, a volunteer role campaigning to protect children and raise awareness of child sexual abuse. Since her debut book, Don't Hold Back, was published in 2018, she's regularly seen across the world as a champion on this subject. And the work she does is incredible. Her backstory is incredible. She's the creator of the hashtag Not My Shame campaign. As you can see, I'm wearing the T-shirt today, which is it's part campaign, part movement. And the founder of Project 9010 charity. 22, she was given an award for her campaigning. She's also a media commentator across a wide variety of topics and a wide variety of platforms as well, including this one. So, Asa Don Brown, hello to you. And all of that's brilliant. The only problem is she's not here yet. So, with all that said, she's not here. So apart from that, we can't really do the show in her absence. I'm just gonna pop into WhatsApp and make sure we've got the link. I'll just send her a quick message in WhatsApp. We'll see what happens. Let's bring on one of her guests. We'll work backwards today. Hello, it's the famous actor Charlie Lawson. Hello, how are you?
How are you, my friend? How you doing?
Well, we've met before. Second time we've met. Lovely to see you again. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty damn good, although it's rather trivial compared to the subject we're going to touch on. But I'm all right, except about 6-7 days ago, I woke up and nearly cried because I've got bloody sciatica.
Ow.
So I'm as tough as old boots, as you know, and I've fallen off race horses and at 40 miles an hour, and I've fallen off bars, and I've fallen off this and rolled around the streets. But this is for the first 10 minutes of the day when you wake up, I swear to God, it brings tears to the eyes, but then the drugs kick in, you're all right.
I've heard that acupuncture is really good for sciatica.
You're not sticking a needle in my spine, my friend.
I wasn't planning on doing it personally, but...
No, I believe so, but I've got an MRI scan to do first. I think it's an old injury that's triggering it.
Okay. Well, I hope that clears up for you soon. She's here.
Where the hell's EJ?
Ta-da!
I'm here.
Hey, how you doing, baby?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Can you
Hello,
hear me?
EJ. How are you?
I can't hear you.
Oh, dear.
Can you not hear us? We can hear you loud and clear.
We can hear you.
I can hear you now. Yes, sorry. Yes, I could hear you having your conversation before, but I was not included. So I was just listening.
Oh,
hello, everybody.
You're the star of the show. Of course, we've kind of got to include you. Otherwise, otherwise there's no show really. Emma Jane Taylor, for the second time, welcome to the Midday Show. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Neil. Lovely to see you. And thank you for having me on with Charlie to talk about the campaign and the importance of it.
Well, we're going to hear all about that over the next hour, and we're going to take a real deep dive into it. As you can see, I'm wearing the T-shirt. I'm all
got mine on.
Yes, all right. Mine's in the laundry.
Yeah, we are, Charlie. What about you? Any questions from our audience, please do feel free to jump in. I do know we've got one of our regular listeners, Asa Don Brown, listening, who's very high up in the psychiatric world in the USA and in Canada. So I'm sure he'll have some really valuable input. And I know he's tuned in. He's always great to have on the timeline. Hello, Dr. Asa. So I think we'll throw it over to you, Emma Jane Taylor. Tell us once again all about yourself and what you're doing. Your story is amazing. As I said before you came on, I've got like a mental top 10 list of the most amazing women I've met ever, and you're on that list. And
Oh,
and
Neil.
congratulations, because you got married recently as well, didn't you? Of
I
course.
did, yes. I got married at the end of last year to a fabulous person who has shown me that it's okay to love and be loved. And actually, it's been one of the most beautiful things for me as a person, having gone through my own difficulties in my life, to then
Mm.
meet somebody who can love me and, like I say, allow me to love them back without that restriction or fear that there's got to be anything more to that other than just a pure love. So I'm very grateful. I met him. Charlie's met him. He's a wonderful man. And I feel very blessed. So thank you
You're
for that,
welcome.
Neil.
I haven't met him personally, but I've seen the pictures online. He looks like a fine man. So it just shows that there are good ones out there, ladies, no matter what.
Oh, I think there's lots of good ones out there, and I think we mustn't forget that. And I think we
No,
can get lost, and I think we can get lost in social media sometimes, that we don't believe there are good people out there, but there really are. And I think we just need to hold on to that, and and encourage people to remember that they're not alone, and people can love them. So,
100%.
yeah. So,
So
Neil,
yeah,
thank
you're an
you.
amazing lady with an amazing message, and really the floor is yours. I'll hand it over to you. So please tell us all about yourself and your campaign and about everything you've been up to.
Thank you, Neil. Well, so I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. I shared my story publicly in 2017, actually. My book was published, and I kind of, that was it really for me. I didn't have any expectations about what was going to happen next. Professionally, I'm in the wellbeing industry. I also work in performing arts. So I work with children from 4 to adults, 104. And that's just a life that I've lived probably since I was about 3 years old, when I started dancing.
Yeah,
Um, and then as the sort of when after I went public, lots of people, oh, my cat's decided to come and join.
it's all
Lots
right.
of people,
Animals and pets, children, they're all welcome on this show.
this is Delilah. So
Hey, Diana.
I yeah, and lots of people started contacting me after I had gone public and my book was out, and I just started chatting to people, and then it sort of made me think a little bit more about my own story, and actually my own journey. I was 9 when I was first abused, and I was really around 16 when I started sort of stepping away. In the middle of that, I had also my biological father, who I love dearly, stepped away from my life. And that's another story on its own.
Mm,
And that kind of just loss, actually, of him not being around really did make me feel even more vulnerable. And I think that sort of really opened me up.
understandably.
And I was very susceptible then to being groomed, because I was broken child, and I had great mum and a great stepfather, but not having my biological father around, and not understanding really why at 11 years old he told me he never wanted to see me again. um
You
so
could
there was
never understand. An 11-year-old mind could never understand that. An
no
11-year-old mind would take that personally and think it's something I've done, I would have thought. Am I right?
Yeah, I was very confused, very
Mm.
confused, very I don't know, just confused and unsure. I was 11, like you say. I was just starting senior school. I didn't get it at all. But a family friend saw maybe the 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 light for himself to come in, and he groomed and abused me for the next few years. But I was sitting duck. I was easy prey. And when you look at the statistic of these conversations, the 90-10 stat is very prevalent. 90% of children are being abused by people they know. And we educate 10% at schools, which is stranger danger, which is still important, right? We mustn't lose sight of stranger danger, but we're ignoring the reality of the 90%
It
statistic.
doesn't. Stranger danger only goes, well, I suppose 10% of the way, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
I find that statistic, and I 100% believe it, but I find it absolutely shocking that it's people you know, people that are in a position of trust and are in a position of responsibility. Um, and it happened to someone I know, and I had a conversation with this person, and this person, I'm deliberately avoiding saying he or she just to keep this person
Yeah. Keep it neutral.
completely anonymous. But this person was, I hope I don't slip up, no, I'm overthinking it, said to me, yes, it happened to me, and I feel an awful lot of shame. And I said, this is even before I'd heard of your work, I said, well, yeah, you're damn right, there's a lot of shame, but it ain't yours. It belongs 100% on the shoulder of the perpetrator. It can be no other. It can be no other way. You see it almost in nature, don't you? Where the predators go for the weak one in the pack. What is that? Is it easy pickings? What I
Well,
don't
it's
get it.
easy pickings, isn't it? And I've got a lot of feedback. I don't know if it's me. I think, no one understands the mind of a paedophile. Or no one
No,
I know anyway.
no.
So it's very hard to try and ascertain those kind of conversations. What I've learned since I've been doing this campaigning and
Sorry. Do you
speaking
want to
up.
give your microphone a little tap? Just to try that.
Is it me?
I think it's you.
I'm going to just unplug.
If I'm hearing it right, quick unplug, quick bit of WD-40, solution to everything. Now we can't hear you.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
That is better. Yes, please carry on.
I can still hear the clicking though, so that says it's probably not me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so can I. So I don't know why. Never mind. We'll press on regardless. You were saying.
anyway, so I was saying, we'll never be able to ascertain information that we may be needing about why people would go agree with a child, a vulnerable, innocent child.
Hang on. I'm so sorry. It's really cutting out. Do you mind if I take you off for a second and if you log back in? Would you mind?
No, that's fine.
Sometimes a reboot can get rid of a multitude of sins. Charlie, how did you get involved with Emma Jane in the first place? Because we all know you from your wonderful acting. Shout out to my friend Annette, who's a major fan of yours and is delighted that I'm talking to you today. But how did you get involved with this?
Well, for whatever reason, I'm a great admirer of courage, especially in particularly adverse circumstances. I followed EJ and I followed her story. My dear wife, Debbie, the night that I actually met her, probably about 2 days in, had me on the floor in tears with the stories of her abuse by a professional golfer, no less, who I'll tell you off air exactly who it is. I'd never come across abuse before, and so when I did, it stuck with me. And then lo and behold, out of the blue, and I told her that I had escaped by the skin of my teeth at boarding school, which I did. It's all in the book. But welcome back, Emma. Anyway, so I watched EJ on on social media. I was extremely moved by her courage and had no hesitation in getting in touch. So we've been in touch for a couple of years, become firm friends. And if you have her in your top 10 of, hugely women that you're extremely proud of, she's in my top 2 and she knows it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Brilliant.
It's been.
I got to know you through editing a podcast you were in. You were on Madeline Black's Unbroken podcast, if I remember rightly. That's how I first heard of you. Anyway, back to you. You were saying, so we can't understand these people's minds. Going for the weak one happens in nature. That's kind of where we were.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is that we can't ascertain information that we really need to make a change on this conversation. But what I do know from the conversations I've had is that most of the people, 90% of the people I know have been abused by people they know, and I think the statistic is higher than we see. I think because I base that on the fact that I don't think people, not enough people do talk about this. So there's a lot of silence. There's a lot of people hiding behind these stories, and because they're hiding back, we'll never really get to see the true statistic of child sexual abuse victims. So we hear it's 1 in 10, 1 in 8, 1 in 7. I'd go as far as to say I think it's 1 in 3, and that's my opinion, and I base that on the conversations I have in the groups that I have and the people that I'm connected to because of Not My Shame campaign.
I find this mind-blowing. This is 2025. You'd think that the human race had evolved beyond the point where we still have a problem like this. Why is it still such a big problem nowadays? What is going on? Why?
I think our biggest problem is, and I've said it 1,000 times, we don't have a political leadership on this conversation. So I have these conversations regularly, daily with survivors. I talk about it with my campaigning, with my charity role as well, at Project 9010. But that is not enough, Neil. We need someone from the top to come in and say, yes, I align, I understand this is a reality and a stat that we need to deal with, and I'm going to do something about it. But until that day, we are simply going round in circles. And, I've lifted the lid. I have connected with over 600 survivors in a group. When Charlie reached out to me, I was like, oh my God, Jim McDonald from Coronation Street's reached out to me. Since then, other people have come forward and reached out. And we, Charlie and I, over the last couple of years, and Charlie's been excellent at raising awareness and has connected me with other people to raise awareness. We need more. We need more. We need more people to come in and go, this is a real issue. It's a real situation and it needs to change. It needs to change because we need to understand it's people that we know. And that's not a nice conversation, right? Who wants to know that someone they know might be doing this?
Given those statistics, Neil, that I believe Emma Jane is right, 1 in 3. I mean, if she's out by 2 and it's 1 in 5, it's still completely shocking.
Doesn't make it much better, does it?
And I think I know she's 100% right because she knows what she's talking about, for God's sake. But if we could find someone, be they Tory, be they Liberal, be they Labour, or be they Reform, or be they anything, to come on with us and raise awareness. The trouble is admitting that you know what Emma Jane is talking about. I mean, it passed me by very luckily because I was a tough little bastard, and he knows who he is, and it's all in the book. But statistically, there will be a huge number of members of Parliament, members of the cabinet, or members of the opposition, or whoever, who have been abused as a child. It's finding the ones, whether or not whatever your opinion of politicians is, it's finding one who has the courage. And I would, I would beg them from the bottom of my heart that if they bump into this podcast or whatever, they give it a long think and get in touch with Emma Jane, because we could use you and you're out there.
I'd be happy to send footage of this to our local MP.
Thank you, Neil.
Absolutely, who I've met, albeit briefly. But I'm not saying like we're best buddies, but we know of each other. So I'd be very happy to do that. What gave you the courage to share your story? Because that's what you hit the nail on the head, Charlie. Courage. It's because something like this, there is so much shame about it, and it was people it involves families, it's brushed under the carpet. Let's just stick our heads in the sand. Let's pretend it's not happening. It'll bring shame to the family. Shame, shame, shame. So you're right. But what gave you the courage to finally, share your story, Emma?
Well, at the time in 2016, I was at that moment, I was very, and I still am, and my business was all around performing arts, well-being, children, adults. I was invited to present the well-being show for That's TV. Well, actually, they got me on as a guest. They wanted me to go on as a guest on the well-being show and talk about my work as a fitness and well-being expert. I left the studio with a series under my belt. They were like, oh, we really want you to come in and talk about well-being, and can you come and cover someone on maternity? I said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do that. I have done a lot of work in the performing world, and and obviously as an expert, well-being is my thing. So I went on and I did 4 weeks, and 4 years later, they'd given me my own show, well-being show, and it was really successful. And then around 2016, I was interviewing people, and people were talking about this stuff to me, and people saw me as someone who, in my area, in my local area, someone who had done well in her industry, had set up businesses when I was in my early 20s, and it just felt, I don't know, I felt like an imposter, because I was like, actually, no one really knows my story. During my businesses were being set up when I was in my 20s, in hardcore therapy, and I had been since I was sort of a juvenile. But I knew that I wanted to dance, do fitness. That's all I kind of really knew. But then my world got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then suddenly I'm interviewing people about their stories of child abuse, or they've got eating disorders, and I'm thinking, I have, and I've majored in all of this, but no one knows. And it felt like a bit of a fraud. I don't know if that makes sense, but I felt just really uncomfortable. And one day I thought, this is it. I'm going to tiptoe out and start sharing my story, because I didn't feel comfortable that all these lovely, brave people were speaking out, and I'm interviewing them and understanding so much of what they were going through, but no one knew about my own story. And so one day I thought, right, I got to do this. And if it can help, if my story can help one person like they are, then it will be the best thing that I've ever done. And so, yeah, I told my family I was going to speak up and out. And then I decided to write my book. And I thought, you know what, this might car crash my career now. It might, right? Who knows? Because people don't like this conversation. At that point, I just didn't care anymore. I wanted to be me. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be true to who I was. And it didn't car crash my career.
Good.
COVID nearly did, those horrible years where everything shut down. But it allowed me to be seen in my own community for who I was. And that was important for me, because I work with children and adults.
Did it feel like a weight coming off your shoulders when you were finally able to talk freely about it?
Massively. I felt sick as a dog the first time I spoke publicly, like really didn't feel comfortable at all. I felt really nervous, and I could barely catch my breath, because it was such you're letting go of years and years and years and years and years of trauma. That's not something you just, give me a mic and I'll talk about it. It's a lot of process. I had a lot of therapy from, a young girl to that moment, when I was in my 40s. I'm 52 now, and I'm not having direct therapy, but I do every now and then. I'll tap into someone about progressive, thinking about keeping my path clear so I can keep moving forward, because I don't want to go back to those days where I was drinking, taking drugs, bulimic, paranoid, all sorts of.
But all of those things are a defense mechanism, aren't they, against the pain that you're feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess when you're then on the other side of that interviewing people, I realised that I just didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to be me, and it made sense then to lots of people how I could, I guess, hold some of those interviews together, because I really understood it.
Yeah. Are you getting some great feedback from our listeners? Dave A. Sleet, he's very into psychology and well-being too. Greetings, one and all. Great to say EJT on the show. Her work has really made a difference.
Oh, thanks,
You,
Dave.
you and Dave know each other, clearly. Do you?
I don't. I'm sure our paths have crossed, but I'm sorry if we've spoken, Dave. I've come across
that
so
might
many
be me
people
being a
now.
bit fanciful, actually. It's just the way he phrased it. That's probably me being fanciful. This is lovely from Dr. Asa Don Brown. Charlie and Emma, I'd love to speak with you beyond this forum. My specialisation, as I say, this guy is really at the top of his game. Research and work has been primarily focused on childhood abuse and childhood sexual abuse. I know, as a victim of childhood abuse, I can concur that all forms of childhood abuse can leave a deep impression on a child's life. It's truly a global epidemic, which it is, and I admire your pursuit. He's definitely very happy to connect you two.
Yeah, do get in touch. Like I say, the more we need an army, right? We need an army of people. And next week, I'm actually on a panel with MP Freddie Van Mierlo. He is a local MP, and he has agreed to come on a panel with me and the local council and safeguarding to talk about this subject and the charity that because that part of my work now is working with Project 9 to 10 and the charity about educating children. And he's agreed to come on a panel with me, and I'm like, yes, that's a real step forward, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
And it'll be a great conversation.
You've obviously tried to get the big cheeses in Parliament to take notice, have you? Has it been like banging your head against a brick wall?
Yeah, and some. It's so frustrating, and I think we cannot be right wing, left wing, middle wing, green wing, reform wing, whatever it is.
This is beyond all of that.
Absolutely, and it really drives me crazy because whilst all these conversations are going on, and social media is the worst, right? I mean, social media is the worst for these things. There's a lot of attacks on people for being politically one way or the other or in the middle, but actually that's not going to help children. That is really not going to help children.
Nothing
Children are not they're not political pawns. The trouble is, it goes that way when you see some of the conversations, and I'm sick of that. I'm really sick of that. Let's make this about children.
You would think with a subject like this, Emma Jane, that it wouldn't matter whether you're whatever you are.
Well,
you think that anyone would denounce this, whether you're Labour, Conservative, or Monster Raving Loony Party. It doesn't matter, does it? I mean, you'd think, wouldn't you?
But listen, Neil, it's we all know historically, and I'm not interested in what religion anyone is, but we know the particular Christian church that has been at the center of a lot of historical abuse or whatever. But when I talk to and because I'm, if you like, a Protestant, I'm not going to mention this because, as Emma Jane says, it's not about politics or anything. It's this sweeps aside anything, and especially in my home, my wee country, which you'll both know has a history of religious divide. I have spoken to people on both sides of the fence in politics, and they will not touch the subject with a barge pole, because in Northern Ireland and indeed Southern Ireland, the abuse is simply not talked about under any circumstances, be that Christian beliefs, or be it guilt, or be it whatever. And people have been caught on both sides. But if you talk, and they shall remain nameless, but I know a lot of members of Parliament back home, and I have a beer with them and all the rest of it. They won't even. There's not even a point of me saying, listen, you fancy coming on a panel with EJ and me and talk about this? It's just no way. So
no.
I mean, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland are extremes. I get that, and Emma's made great progress across the water in England, and long may that continue, because as she said, like it or not, these people are important and they're assets to our campaign.
So I agree. I fully agree, Charlie. If the big guns did get on board, thought experiment, and the conversation happened in the way that you would want it to, Emma Jane?
The way that Emma wants it to happen, because we're all too familiar with people jumping on. One day they're in favor of climate change, the next day he's changed his mind. So, what we don't want is some big wig from Parliament turning it into a campaign for his political
no,
party.
100%. I could not agree more. So
it's very difficult for Emma Jane to sort that out.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Just in a thought experiment, let's say it did happen, a big cheese jumps on, it happens exactly your way. What would it look like, Emma Jane? What would it look like, and what changes would happen in a society as a result? If I could wave a magic wand, if you like.
We would, well, there's lots of ways. First of all, we need to go straight to children and educate children and safeguard them. And so the work that I'm doing with Project 9010, which is my charity, which I set up a couple of years ago, is all about educating, safeguarding leads. So they work with the children. I don't work with children. We don't work with children. Full stop. We work with safeguarding leads across the country, sharing valuable education that can then be shared into the schools with the education programs we've created. We are focusing at the moment on primary schools. We do have an extension into senior schools, but my target audience right now would be primary. And that's not because we don't think senior school children need support. They really do, but they need a lot of different support now. They are already mainstream into very difficult conversations online. You've got social media and problems around that. So we do need to attack that, but there's a lot of people doing great work around that area. We need to go to primary schools. We need to help children understand, like, we don't talk about child sexual abuse with children, by the way. I don't think that's the right thing at all. I don't think it's safe to tell children it could be someone they love that would hurt them. I think what we need to do is help protect them with tools and knowledge, so if they were ever faced with a grooming situation, they could challenge it. And I say that because...
And they do need that information, don't they? Because there was a big school of thought. I mean, yes, you'd be careful with the language that you use, and you certainly wouldn't want to scare them, because that would have the opposite effect. But there was a school of thought, no, children should never be, taught that. But and then I thought, well, yeah, they should, because otherwise, how would they know? Otherwise, it's normalized to them, and they think that's what's normal.
There's science behind this, and if Dr. Ace is still here, I'm sure that he'll back me up. When children are developing, right? Brains are developing, and hear me out. When we're around 3, 4 to 7, our brains are becoming open. Books, creative environment is really important. Nature is really important. Well-being is important. Understanding relationships, understanding trust, what's appropriate, what isn't. And what's happening is we are overloading children. We are just absolutely drowning children with stuff their brains cannot process. Now, I was 9 years old when I was first abused. It was an isolated incident, and who knows if that would have been it. Maybe I wouldn't be here as a campaigner today. I don't know. I say that because I know lots of people who say, oh, it only happened once to me. Well, once is too much. I was 11 when my biological father abandoned me. And so those years, so 8, 9, 10, 11, I was overexposed to emotions and physicalities and relationships that I had no way of processing. I hadn't developed as a child. So I was stripped from my childhood at that point. I was then abused for the next 4 or 5 years. Through the abuse, I was drinking, taking drugs, and then you had the fallout that I've already spoken about. So by the time I get to 16, 17, I'm very underdeveloped as a child. I'm lacking maturity. I'm broken. Most people, and my senior school friends have spoken about this. They thought I'd be dead or in prison by the time I was 20. My mum did as well. So when I started speaking out, I was around 23, 24, which is quite common for anyone who's gone through trauma, because your brain is starting to develop. They say in late teens, early 20s, some say 30s, but that's when you're starting to really sort of go, oh, yes, now I realise what happened to me was wrong. But I'm now dealing with addictions and disorders. I flunked at school. I'm not an unintelligent person, but no one recognised that this child, they all thought it was because my father left me. And yes, Neil, that left a great big hole. But behind that was a horrific abuse that was happening. And I couldn't talk about it. So look, let's not overwhelm young minds with stuff they cannot process, they don't understand. I mean, most adults I know don't understand half the conversations they're having online or understand technology, and they are all getting drowned and drained by just stuff they're seeing, and it's depressing. You're putting that to a child's head and they cannot tolerate it. Stuff I
No.
see online, I'm
I mean,
like,
the
I find
brain
it
up to
too
the age of
upsetting.
about 7, isn't it, is an open book. You know,
Yeah,
children just absorb. There isn't
yeah,
a critical factor, shall we say, or if you
no,
like, the prefrontal cortex isn't developed for the
yeah,
critical thought to get all sciencey about it, I guess. So it's just all the information goes in, but there's no kind of truth filter. What's right, what's wrong. So it will all seem normal, and it's only until we
yeah,
get older that we can look back with this developed, adult mind, the critical factor, if you like, and go, wait a minute. No, that wasn't. I have a theory that if something happens to someone, if there's a trauma, we kind of get emotionally frozen at that age. So you could be like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 16-year-old in a 30-year-old's body, or very easily triggered into that. It's like where the hose gets kinked, it gets kinked at that point at the age it happened. Do you agree with that? That's been my theory for a while.
I really do. And I think, I was very underdeveloped. I was lacking maturity. I was held back because of trauma, but I didn't know that.
Mm.
So, going back to your question, I want to invest. I think we really, as a society, invest in children, primary school children. We shouldn't scare children by these conversations. We should simply nourish and empower them to understand that they can challenge when they faced with situations that might feel inappropriate or not safe. And so, maybe when what had happened to me had happened, if I'd have understood earlier on, I could have maybe said, oh, actually, this man just did something to me. It wasn't right. Instead of which, I kept it very quiet, and
And
like
that's
most victims
and that was
will,
going to be
because
my
you're
next question. If a young person happens to be watching this, what and something they think inappropriate happened, what can they do about it? Who can they go to? And
well,
as adults,
there's
what signs can we look for that something might be a bit off?
I can speak from experience. I would come home with diamonds, leather jackets, clothes, perfumes. I wasn't working. I
Mm.
mean, where was this coming from? I was a kid. Like my mum and my stepfather are brilliant people, right? And most parents are groomed by groomer, because they're known to the family, whether it be family friend, family, teacher, authorities. It's someone known to you quite often, as we've already discussed, the 90-10 step. So if your child is turning up with things that you would be questioning where they've come from, knuckle down on that conversation, but do it in a sensitive way that helps the child feel safe with you, because I think it can be quite scary, because you're now also treading into other waters, which is trauma bonding. Now,
I was
trauma
going to
bonding is
ask
very
about this.
real.
Can you explain trauma bonding to us? I was going to ask about this at some point. So you've led us into that beautifully. What is trauma bonding, please?
So, trauma bonding is essentially is what it says. Your trauma has bonded you with with the abuser. So, the first incident for me was was a restaurant owner, and he'd befriended my family on holiday, and therefore befriended me and all the other children. And I've got goodness knows how many other children he did this to. But I liked him, and he made me feel safe, and so I wasn't going to speak out about him, right? I just wasn't, because he had made me feel like he was my friend. And when you built that, you've got trust with that person, even though it's not nice, that's what you're building, is like that bond. My father, I loved my father. Like, he was the nicest person I ever met in my life. He was funny, he was handsome, he was everything. So when he abandoned me, I guess deep down, I always thought, oh, he'll come back. So I'd have nothing bad said about him, even though he dropped me like a hot cake. But then I got older, right? And now I'm 52 and I never saw him again. And he died last year, apparently.
Oh.
That's really sad, right? I mean, But that was my bond with him, was I loved him. I don't like him now for what he did, but I don't not love him because he was my creator as such. And I think
So it's
life and
hard to step away
circumstances.
when you've got these conflicting
Yeah,
feelings. One minute you hate what they're
absolutely.
doing to you, but at the same time you might love that person at the same time. Please tell me if I've got that wrong. Am I right there?
No, that's really true. And, and I think that's a really hard concept. People, victims often like and love their abuser because it could be someone in their family or friend and so on and so forth. And then my abuser, who sort of like groomed me after my father had left, I wasn't going to speak out about him. He was horrible to me, but he was the one that was making me feel safe at a time where I felt pretty wretched and vulnerable because of what my father did. So he just fed me with drink and drugs, and there you go. I mean, that was my
It just
life.
sounds it's so crass, isn't it? It just sounds like easy pickings. It really does. It's just
It's awful. And I think, looking back, people who knew me back in that day when I was the party animal, the wild child. I was, if there was a party, I'd be there. If there was a table, I'd be on it. If there was a bottle of wine, I'd have finished it before anyone else. If there were drugs, I'd be selling, I would be all over that. And they can remember me like that. And now they'll be like, oh, now it makes sense because they now know so much more about my story. People who know me today, I think, would struggle to think of me as that person because, it's like I haven't touched alcohol for 30 years, right? And I won't go back there because it led me out of control in the end, and I just didn't like that feeling, and that was the fallout of abuse.
yeah, very understandable. We've got some comments. Let's do some of the comments. Dave Sleet says Stockholm Syndrome, the ultimate example of trauma bonding. He also says teaching children to understand and identify risk is an essential, but we've avoided major personal risk awareness and overloaded with exposure to risk. Oh, that's good, Dave. I'm gonna read that again. That's really good. We've avoided major personal risk awareness and overloaded with exposure to risk. It's like awareness versus fear, isn't it? And they're two completely different things. We've warped children's perceptions of risk, and perpetrators use this failure. Jamie Dunn says, afternoon, Neil. Often everyone arrive late, but guests talking on subjects that others don't dare. Well, we dare. And Asa Don Brown, back to what you were saying earlier, Charlie, I wholeheartedly agree. It's a cultural, familial, academic and religious issue that stems the globe. I've had a similar conversation with a Canadian member of parliament. There's an underlying fear of losing votes or causing ripples throughout one's community.
Do you know what? When I first started speaking out, like my stepdad was like my best friend. I mean, he was just amazing. He was the best person I've ever met in my life. He sadly also died last year.
I'm sorry.
But when I first started speaking out, I talked to my parents, and it was difficult, right? I mean, it's not a nice thing for all the reasons we know. But I said, if I don't do it, I feel like I'm not doing the right thing by other people and trying my best to try and stop these conversations from happening with children. Anyway, then I got trolled a bit. And this was very early on, when I'm talking about 2016, 2017. And my stepdad said to me, it's the day you stop getting trolled that is the day you've got to worry. Because no one likes these conversations. And he also said, the good will prevail. And I truly believe that. Like, it's hard, right? We're all out here doing what we can. Like, Neil, thank you for inviting me on. Charlie's been absolutely amazing. I owe so much to Charlie. Well, we all do for this conversation. And other people have stepped forward. Stuart Anthony, Sarah Crowcroft, Nadia Jamil, Pakistani actor, Matt Hoy, former UB40. So many people have stepped forward, significant voices. And it's made a difference. Michael Parkinson, who was at an event shortly before he died, and he was there, and I had my T-shirt on, and he was asking me about it. Yeah. And I said, can I take a picture with you? And I said, can I have a selfie? And he said, yes. I said, do you want me to cover my jacket? And he said, no, I don't. I want you to keep it open. And he said, if I can do anything to help. I said, well, I think this will be a great help, just having you take this picture with me. So I took the picture, and then he said, let me know if I can help more. Sadly, he died soon after. But he was amazing. Ross Kemp, I went to an event where he was speaking at Grant Mitchell from EastEnders, and I said, I got a T-shirt, because I'm always conscious not everyone wants to be seen with me in this T-shirt. But he was like, no, he was happy. John Altman, Nasty Nick from EastEnders. So lots of people are like saying, yes, they're happy to stand with me to have a picture.
These are not small names, are they? And I wouldn't think twice about having a selfie with you in the T-shirt. You know what I mean? It wouldn't even cross my radar. You're welcome, but it's just not a terribly big deal. Of course, you know. But these are not insignificant names, are they?
No, absolutely not. And I think the trouble with this conversation is not fashionable enough, right? You know, it's one of those conversations that people don't want to align with in the political world for that reason. You know, it might not get them votes, and that is exploiting a conversation on its own, right? I mean, how awful is that? How awful is that? And we cannot be at that point in life.
But it's an interesting thing, Emma, and I'm going to phone you later on, darling, to have a sort of conversation about that, and that's not do you know. You see, we sort of we're going along this road, and if we look at the current debate that's going on in Parliament about child abuse, rape gangs, etc., that has now become a political battleground. It's as simple as that. Yeah. I would be friends with Sammy Woodhouse, who we'll all be familiar with, and Sammy will say exactly the same thing, as will her friends who've been through the same thing. But that is becoming a political football. You've only got to listen to the Question Time to know that the other day. And you and I, Emma, and all of us really, I suppose we at some point we have to meet and we have to talk about where we can find common ground with Sammy. But it's kind of it's child abuse.
Yeah. Oh, it's all child abuse, and I know that they
But when do we rub along? Do you know what I mean? When do we rub along? How do we do that?
Yes, and I think you're right.
Up in the politics.
And I think the trouble is these conversations are so big, all of them, the trafficking, the rape gangs, that, you know, I know Sammy's doing great work, so is Maggie Oliver, and they're all raising awareness about these conversations, and they're huge, and they've become like a hot potato in the political world, and it's great, right? Because that's raising awareness. Child sexual abuse with people you know is another side of that conversation, that yes, it is child abuse, but it becomes a bigger pot, and it becomes a huge pot, and I think then it becomes, what I feel is then the political world don't know which road to go down, and they've obviously got a big battle on with the good as well, which is great. They've got the big battle happening, and people are much more aware about the trafficking and rape gang. But this conversation, that it could be someone you know and love in a family setting.
You've actually in a minute and a half, 2 minutes, you've explained it to me, AJ. Thank you so much, darling. I love you lots. You've just explained my question.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge pot of political horror, and I always say, if you've been abused as a child, you will fight like this. If you know someone who's been abused as a child, you will fight like this. If you are on the outside looking in, you'll be like, it seems like a good cause to understand, but maybe there's other things you want to focus on. Whereas I believe, unless you start young and get into the conversations with children now, then you're not going to have this flourishing society that political world want. They want you to have, you know, get through school, have breakfast clubs, like get a good education, get a mortgage, get, you know, and so on and so forth. But actually, if you've broken as a child because of child abuse, whatever that child abuse looks like, right, whatever, how are you even going to understand how to flourish in your life as a young adult?
You won't, because a comment I will come on to in a minute. It's Asa Don Brown. He's made a brilliant comment. It's very sciencey, and I put it on the screen in 1 second. But you're right. Fat Scotty, who's another colleague of mine, radio colleague, EJT Charlie. I've worked with children organisations that pay lip service to safeguarding, when in practice there's not enough enforcement. Why do you think organisations don't enforce better? Says Scotty.
Thank you, Scotty. I totally agree with you. One of the things I'm doing next week with the charity is raising awareness of safeguarding, because I think safeguarding is just a tick boxing exercise. People like, oh, I've done safeguarding. Have you really? Do you know what it's about? If you know what it's about, why are you letting your children go home without being signed out? Who are those children going with? You know, it's all very good and well to say that you've done all this training, but what are you doing in your practices to make a difference? And I have seen horror stories on these situations. I have been linked to some situations that I have been so upset about, and I've tried to raise awareness of, and you know, I don't have the big enough voice like Charlie was saying right now. I mean, I have a voice and I'm out there doing things and my profile's raising and then people are much more aware of who I am and what I'm doing. We need millions of people, right? Millions of people to really lean into this conversation, to understand what safeguarding means. Your clubs, your kids' clubs, your gym clubs, the dance clubs, the swimming clubs, the scouts, the ground, you know, whatever it is. Do you know what their safeguarding policy is, parents? Do you know what you should be doing as a parent to understand your safeguarding policy? Does your child know what safeguarding policy is at that place, that venue? Probably not, is my guess on that, because no one enough is having these conversations. So one of the things we're doing next week with the MP, with Freddie Van Mierlo on the panel, is discussing the importance of safeguarding and understanding what people can do. So I've got Hobbs of Henley have sponsored the event. They've given us the New Orleans boat in Henley, and we'll be on there next week. And there are still tickets available. They're complimentary. I'm on a panel. There's a few people on the panel with me. We want people in that space who we know can walk away and make a difference somewhere else because of the conversations we've had. We've got
what do people need to search if they'd like to come along to that? I can put it on the screen.
If they find out my website, emmajanetaylor.com, contact me. I can send all the links necessary to get complimentary tickets. It's really busy, the event. I think we've only got, you know, a handful of tickets left, you know, maybe 20, but they're all free, and this week is the final push. So we would love to see anybody there who thinks that this is an important conversation, and then they take it out into the world, right? Because children need a bigger army around them, and we need children to be able to go through their life and flourish. Part of the Not My Shame campaign is about protecting children because of the voices of survivors. And obviously, going back to the campaign, Not My Shame is about survivors, the trauma they've gone through, the silence they're still suffering, the impact this conversation has on their life, and how together as society we can raise awareness, make a difference. And on the 1st of May, tomorrow, is our awareness day. It's our second year. Now, in 2 years, we've raised awareness. We've got 600 people in a group. We've obviously, I'm talking to you here now. I've had journalists speaking with me this week about raising awareness of it, and I've got other activities going on with other areas. We've got Town Hall lighting up in Oxfordshire white in honour of the conversation, to observe the conversation. We have also got Chester Council, I think, doing the same. And we've got some other things happening across the UK, which I don't talk about because I'm not sure that they're actually going to happen until tomorrow. And then Nottinghamshire City Council took the campaign into Nottingham, around Nottingham, to say, you know, hashtag Not My Shame, and made awareness of it. We're being seen in Spain, Portugal, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Americas, South Americas, everywhere around the world. Thailand even we've reached last year. So
the work you're doing is just stunning, isn't it? It's just incredible. Asa Don Brown, a long comment here, and he's so long comment he's run out of space, so we might have to do this in 2 parts. Emma, you're absolutely correct. The brain of a young child is very impressionable and amenable to those in authority. Developmental disruptions can cause significant consequences, and the literature clearly shows that early neglect, nutrition, socialization, and stress define who we are as children and become as adults. In addition to the anatomical and electrophysiological consequences, I told you it was good science, abused children show significant cognitive impairments that can impact their future life trajectories and we'll have the second half of that if you don't mind, Dr. Asa, that'd be lovely. Question for Charlie, if I may, from Fat Scotty. As a highly influential celebrity and talented actor, I would concur with that. What was safeguarding like for younger actors? Was it embraced in the entertainment industry?
No, I mean our industry, I suppose, is certainly when I was young at drama school, there wasn't any safeguarding, but we were open-hearted, emotion. Well, I wasn't until I got introduced to good, decent human beings who changed my life really at drama school. But there seemed to be an atmosphere of love, affection, and kindness, and there wasn't any at drama school and in my industry. It's only now that people have come out and I don't know anything about the facts of Kevin Spacey, but increasingly only now that people are saying that certain people had a bad time, and I couldn't say more than that. Certainly my experience as a young actor was just warmth, love and affection at Guildhall School of Music and Drama. And being a complete tough guy, I'm just telling the truth. I never experienced anything bad in my life, and it's only now that I hear from actresses about what they've been through. But we digress. Emma very carefully has explained the commonality and the difference between adults and children, and we, Emma and I, and notable others, are concentrating on our corridor, and that doesn't take anything away from Sammy and her corridor, but we can't concentrate on the entire thing, although it's you just can't. But Emma has found our market, and that's where we must pursue.
Yes.
Am I right, Emma? Sorry, baby.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. I think there's so many great conversations being raised by so many great people now, and that's great. But if we all go over there, we're going to not really investigate this conversation. So I support everybody doing everything on child abuse, but I'm focusing on the 90-10 stat. And actually, can I just go? I think are we on for an hour? Because I think I've only got a couple of minutes left too.
We are. We can run over. It doesn't have to be strictly an hour. I'm in no rush as long as you're not.
I am an ex-child performer, so I was performing from an early age as a dancer, young performer in West End, and so on and so forth. I was regularly in the My Guy magazines. I don't know if you remember those. I did 3 or 4 magazines, and then the photographer, and I don't know his name, he wanted to do some pictures of me as a young girl model, and we knew him, but my pictures with him. I'm holding a paintbrush, by the way, and I've got rocks that I've been painting for the Not My Shame Day, which I'll show you in a minute. But I don't always hold a paintbrush.
Right. You do you.
Anyway, he then asked me, and it was all agreed, right, with my family. And this goes again to being groomed. So he took me into this house, and he was the boyfriend of a page 3 girl, actually, and it was a fantastic house. I don't know her name, I don't know his name. I was like probably 14, 15 at this point. I was pretty gone anyway as a child, but performing was the thing actually as a dancer that gave me my sanity. Anyway, he asked me to do some pictures, and I can tell you they're horrific pictures, and God knows where they've ended up. I found a couple myself when I went through some of my own stuff. So I did have a few experiences, not many, but the safeguarding as when I was a child was horrendous. I'm now the director of a performing arts school, and the safeguarding in my care is tight. You know, some people get really sick of my safeguarding. I'm like, well, you can find another school, because if your child goes missing, it's on my watch, right?
I
And
think
I'm not
there's
having
reason
that.
for hope. I went to a dance show. My girlfriend's youngest was in the dance show, and I went up there to give her a bit of moral support. And it was up in London, and you could see the safeguarding. Literally, there's notices up everywhere about
Good.
safeguarding, and they were pretty damn hot on it. And I thought, yeah, this is good. Ace Don Brown finishes up saying, as they emerge into adulthood, the development of psychological disorders is very common amongst these who have been abused, which I would guess is some kind of coping mechanism, or to turn into drink and drugs, anything to numb the pain, anything to distract. I'm guessing, I'm not the doctor here, but I would guess that's what that's about, and it causes other disorders spring out of it, I suppose. What a conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to have this annual conversation, but it needs to also be, I mean, obviously, when I say annual with you, Neil, this is great because we're having it today. We're going to share it tomorrow on the 1st of May, which is our awareness day. We have our ribbons to wear, which say we support survivors of child sexual abuse. The other question that I didn't sort of fully answer earlier is that what do I want to happen? Well, I want children to be better educated, better protected, safeguarding teams to be much more aware of the conversations, parents, guardians, everybody to be more aware of things that they can do, things they need to look out for, things that they need to raise alarms for. Also, on the other side of that, we've also got a global problem of broken adults because of childhood sexual abuse. And many of them will maybe go to their grave without sharing that story. I know when I've gone out some days and bumped into older ladies in their 80s, and they've said that they heard about my story, but they'll never share theirs because why would they bother now? Because they've gone through their life.
But it
Well,
is
that's just
important.
really sad, right? That's so sad.
And
So
it'll
we
probably
must
do them
get,
the power of good to get it off their chest. It's like,
yes.
Emma, I live about 55 feet from our village pub, and about 6 months ago, the subject came up, and I was talking about my work with Emma, and talking about Debbie, and out of the blue, to my right on the table, when somebody else went to the loo and there was time, this guy who would be my age said that he had been abused as a child, and I've known him for 25 years, and he started to get quite emotional about it, and I said, well, you just wait till you want to talk and then we'll talk. But so Emma's, we kind of have this very, 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 very vital conversation about child abuse, but we forget, of course, that Emma's 52, and there are older people who've been through it and are damaged. And clearly, the more I thought about my friend that I've known for 25 years outside the pub, and some of his behaviors and some of his mannerisms, it all made sense. So you're right, Emma.
It's so sad. And, before this show goes out tomorrow, we'll be doing a minute's silence for survivors to observe the conversation, to feel the impact of the conversation, and to send up good energy for those broken because of child sexual abuse. So many are suffering. They've maybe not got the help. They don't have the money to get the therapy they need. The government could really help much more with that. They could really invest. I did a petition at Parliament a few years ago, and it was, didn't go anywhere because these conversations rarely do, but it was about supporting survivors, the government having, funding to help people who are broken, and have a better system, because, mental health, emotional health, physical health is vital for humans. And
well,
if you've
if the
been broken
government
as a
wants the
child,
society they say they want for us all to be successful, and a mentally healthy society is a successful one. You can't have a healthy
absolutely.
society filled with
But
sick.
Neil, Charlie's already touched on this. There's a lot of things said for a lot of the wrong reasons. And we've got to be careful of that. I have to be careful of that. I'm like, everyone who knows me knows that I'm very cautious about who I connect with and how I connect. And, I want you on the team, right? But I want you on the team for the right reasons. I want you to be singing off the same song sheet to improve this conversation, to protect children and support survivors, not because you want more votes, or that's just merely exploiting children. However, if we've got someone there who has 10 million followers and they tell their 10 million followers about the Not My Shame campaign, and those people reach more people so they don't feel alone, then great. I mean, that would be brilliant. Where is that
powerful conversation. It's moving in the right direction, albeit slowly, thanks to people like you, Emma Jane Taylor. I think you're amazing. Anything I can do personally, you know where to find me. So please do get in touch.
Thank you, Neil.
One thing
You've been amazing.
Is send you the footage as soon as it processes. Take about 10 minutes, and I'll send you the footage by WeTransfer of this. Feel free to use it for any purpose that you want to. Charlie Lawson, amazing to see you again. Thank you so much for adding your voice to this, and lovely to see you again. And we will finish with a close-up of Emma Jane's painted stones. Hold on a minute, I'll put you on big.
I'm not a very good artist. However, these are really important. These are the Not My Shame rocks that I painted. They're gold and black and kind of green. I've done quite a few of them, and they will be. Survivors around the world have painted rocks, and tomorrow they will be going around the world, and they'll be some are put on beaches, some are put by trees, some are put on benches. If you see a rock and it's got the website on there, have a look at it, because it might mean something to you, or it might mean something to someone else that you know. But don't walk by, because we can't walk by children anymore, or survivors.
Powerful message to end the show on. Emma Jane Taylor, Charlie Lawson, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Charlie.
Bye, EJ. Speak to you later, baby.